Talk to me a little bit about, when we're talking about that era, you mentioned briefly Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. I mean, I think Ray Stevens probably doesn't get his flowers enough. Everybody who I know that's older than me that was around to see that stuff said they were the greatest tag team of all time. You couldn't believe how far ahead of their time they were as tag team performers. And even a guy like Ric Flair would say his favorite wrestler growing up, the reason he would ask his dad to take him to the matches is so he could see Ray Stevens. Like even the flip in the corner, he borrowed that from Ray Stevens.
Stole it.
Straight up. And he would admit to that because and I know that was a criticism for Flair over the years where they said, oh, he was a routine man. I think Bret Hart has even said it was, when you've seen one Ric Flair match, you've seen them all. He was a routine man. But if you ask Rick about that, Rick would say when his dad would take him to the matches to see Ray Stevens, if Ray didn't do the flip in the corner, he was disappointed. And he sort of equated it to like, hey, if you're going to go see Elvis, yeah, you'll listen to the new stuff, but you want him to play the hits. And I understand that. And I don't think we talk about Ray Stevens enough. Do you think it's just because it was before cable television is what it is and there's just not a lot of that footage out there? Or why doesn't Ray Stevens get the props that maybe he deserves?
I don't think that Ray was ever on a national stage to get those props for as many people to see him. Ray was huge in San Francisco. Ray was huge in the AWA. Ray was huge in the WWF and the Carolinas and Atlanta. Beyond that, which by the way, to have that kind of career and work on top in all of those territories is saying something.
Yeah.
So, Ray was just this magnificent worker. And I think that to Rick's point, man, you were disappointed if you didn't see Ray do the bump. But Ray went into the bump differently every time. And Ray, Ray couldn't do the same match. And here's the difference between Ray Stevens and Pat Patterson. Ray could go out and tear the house down, but he couldn't do the same thing twice.
Okay.
If you asked him to do the same match the next night, he would look at you and go, what did we do last night?
I got you.
I went out and partied last night. I have no idea what the hell the match was last night. He had to be different. He went out there on instinct, gut, feel, and he would listen to the audience. And every match was different. He didn't do his routine just to do his routine. Right. He made his routine fit to the audience that night. And the audience wasn't coming with it, then okay, he knew how to get the audience up. He knew how to take them down and take them for a ride. That was the difference in Ray Stevens. But Ray Stevens couldn't tell you how he did it. Ray Stevens could not tell you how, okay, go out and do this. Couldn't tell you how he did it. Pat could go out and tear the house down every night and have a different match every night and listen. But Pat would tell you why he did every single thing that he did and why it mattered. And here's how and why you should do this and try this. Pat understood the business to that level that he could teach other people how to put things into place in their matches. Pat was a leader, and Ray was a feeler. Ray just went out and performed based on his gut instinct and what he felt that night. Was a tremendous heel and a great baby face. Much better heel because you believed him and you believed everything that Ray did. But even when many years later, when we brought Ray in to try and be an agent, Ray just couldn't do it because Ray knew what Ray would do, but Ray only knew what Ray would do once Ray got into the ring. He couldn't tell you what his match was beforehand. He get you a finish, yeah, and he would do that to a T, but the rest of it, had to call it out there, had to go out there and see what that audience that night was buying. And then he would make his match fit. And he would bring the audience up to a crescendo. But he couldn't tell you how he did it. Ever. And as much as we tried to, teach him to teach, he was just like, kid, I got to be out there. Now, if I was in the ring with him, I could teach him. But even that, I think that Ray could tell you what to do in the moment.
Right.
But he couldn't tell you why. Pat could tell you why. Pat could tell you how to either abbreviate or to adjust and tell you what to do. But, Ray just did it. Ray was probably the single best, just natural in the business. There have been a few, but I think Ray was the best. And especially after I got to know him, was that, man, he's just a natural performer. He's just a guy that was meant to go out and perform.
Right.
And that was Ray Stevens in a nutshell. And that's what made him so great.
Let's talk about how Shire's deal comes to an end here. I mean, I guess, as the territory started to get smaller and smaller and that business starts to dry up, what happened with him and Vern Gagne there at the end? Do you recall?
Well, I think it was more over, I want to say Denver, but, Roy would try and branch out, and Vern would go in and run Denver. And Vern would go in and run Denver, a lot of times with the big battle royal type shit. And I just think it was more than anything one of those old timer disagreements over using talent, how they use talent and why. And Vern was getting bigger, and Vern wanted to go into San Francisco. And I think that Roy was like, no, San Francisco's mine. So we'll work together. And then I think Vern just kind of burned him and tried to push him out and bully him. And I think that, I don't think Roy had any fight left in him at that point. I think Roy went as far as he could, looked at what money he had. And again, you got to go back and look at during those times, a lot of that was cash business.
Yes.
So, Roy had his ranch and his house and all that. And I think that Roy just kind of was done. Didn't want to fight anymore.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what adfreeshows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? Ad-free shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that adfreeshows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. adfreeshows.com.